Imagine living in a city where, like, the cold is so lethal that just expressing outward emotion is considered a fatal waste of energy.
Right. Yeah, it's just entirely unforgiving.
Exactly. You don't get to complain about the wind. You don't get to shiver loudly to get sympathy. You literally just conserve your heat, shut your mouth, and survive.
It's intense. And today, we're looking at a document that takes that exact psychological trauma and, well, translates it into a ruthless, mathematically perfect competitive gaming strategy.
Which is just wild to me. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we have this incredibly unique source document.
Yeah, it's titled Devon's Pokémon Notes.pdf. And on the surface, it really just presents itself as this character profile of a Pokemon trainer named Devon.
Right. They call him the boy from Snowpoint.
Exactly. But as you read through, you realize it's doing something much more ambitious. I mean, it's this dual-layered masterclass.
Oh, totally.
On one level, it's a profound psychological study of how a strict philosophy of discipline-like restraint over passion shapes a person. But then on the other level, it demonstrates how those exact abstract concepts are hard-coded into tangible, unforgiving game mechanics.
And for you listening right now, even if you have, like, literally never picked up a Pokemon game in your life, you really need to hear this.
Yeah, absolutely. The game is just the framework.
Exactly. Because while the vehicle for the discussion is a video game, the actual engine running underneath it is entirely about decision-making. We're unpacking how to set uncompromising standards, you know?
Right. And how to manage highly volatile resources.
Yeah, and basically how we as humans behave when we are suffocated by intense pressure.
So to really understand Devon's philosophy, we're going to have to start with the environment that forged him.
Snowpoint City.
Right. The document establishes very early on that geography is essentially destiny for this character. Snowpoint is in the far north, just battered by constant blizzards. The notes state explicitly, and this is a quote, "Snowpoint City doesn't raise children, it tempers them."
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Snowpoint is essentially a psychological pressure cooker.
Right, it really is.
It's like living in this extreme survival environment where every single choice has an immediate, potentially fatal consequence. You don't get away with faking it, you know?
No, not at all. You can't put on a brave face and pretend the blizzard isn't happening.
Because the blizzard literally does not care about your brave face. It
Yeah.
only cares about whether you have the insulation to survive.
Exactly. And the choice of the word tempers in the text is incredibly deliberate.
Oh, like with metal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In metallurgy, you temper steel by heating it and then rapidly cooling it in a really harsh environment.
Right, to make it stronger.
Yeah, it sacrifices some of the raw hardness to greatly increase toughness and elasticity. It removes the brittle impurities.
Wow. So Snowpoint is like that harsh cooling process for the human psyche.
You nailed it. The cold strips away excess noise, comfort, and the illusion that the universe owes you anything. Devon learned really early on that loud performative emotion is just an expenditure of energy.
Which makes his first real interaction with a Pokemon so uncharacteristic.
It really does.
Because usually in these narratives, a kid goes to a pristine laboratory and some professor hands them a perfectly healthy, genetically optimized starter Pokemon.
A very safe, controlled start.
Right. But Devon finds an Eevee half buried in a snowdrift outside the city limits. It's freezing to death.
And most people raised in Snowpoint would have just kept walking.
Exactly. The city actively teaches you not to waste your very limited caloric energy on lost causes.
But he saves it. And he doesn't save it out of some innate glowing kindness either. The document is very careful to point this out.
Right, it wasn't a pity thing.
No, not at all. He saves the Eevee out of recognition. He looks at this tiny creature and sees that it's fighting the overwhelming cold exactly the way he was taught to. Quietly, stubbornly, and without crying out for help, they form this silent agreement right there in the snow.
Just, we survive. That's enough.
That's exactly it. But the truly defining moment of this early relationship isn't the rescue itself, it's what happens after.
Oh, yeah, the evolution thing. Or, well, the lack of it.
Right. Eevee is famous in this universe for its genetic instability. I mean, it can evolve into almost anything based on its environment, the items you give it, or even its emotional connection to its trainer.
But Devon's Eevee just stays an Eevee.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is how Devon reacts to that stagnation. In an environment where failing to adapt literally means death, having a partner that refuses to change is terrifying.
So he tries to force it, right?
He does. He obsessively studies every known trigger for evolution. He applies stress, he changes conditions.
But nothing works.
Nothing works. And eventually, he arrives at a realization that basically becomes the bedrock of his entire worldview. That evolution, or really any kind of personal growth, isn't just a reaction to stimulus. It's entirely about timing.
Wow, because if you force something to change before it's structurally ready, you just get something unstable.
Exactly. A forced evolution might give you immediate power, but it leaves underlying fractures.
So he makes the incredibly difficult choice to simply wait.
He exercises restraint.
Yeah, that conscious decision to value long-term stability over short-term power. That becomes his signature trait.
And that trait is immediately put to the test when Devon finally leaves Snowpoint.
Right, because once you have this hyper-controlled worldview, what happens when it collides with unpredictable emotional people?
It gets messy. He doesn't leave for a grand adventure either. He leaves because the freezing cold only teaches you how to endure the weather. It doesn't teach you anything about other human beings.
I mean, put yourself in Devon's shoes for a second. You've spent your entire life strictly policing your own emotions just to survive.
Right.
You step out into the world and you see trainers who are just entirely driven by passion. They chase raw strength without any discipline.
And they use incredibly destructive power recklessly.
Yeah, and then they justify the collateral damage by saying, oh, I just believed in my Pokémon. To Devon, this must look like absolute madness.
It's the exact noise and illusion he was taught to suppress. So he inherently distrusts anyone who wields power without control.
Which turns him into the rival figure for the player.
Exactly. But he doesn't battle the player to win a badge or a trophy. He battles to dismantle their worldview.
He wants to prove they're unstable.
Yeah, he views the player's strategy of relying on passion and friendship as fundamentally flawed.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. There's a specific moment in the notes where Devon utterly defeats another trainer.
Oh, the gatekeeper moment.
Yeah, he doesn't gloat. He just looks at them and says, you're not weak, you're just careless.
It's such a cold line.
Right. I have to ask, is Devon just being an arrogant, elitist jerk here, or is there a genuine clinical diagnosis happening? Like, is he actually seeing a flaw that the rest of the world ignores?
The document really suggests it's a completely accurate diagnosis, but it's a diagnosis that carries a huge psychological toll.
How so?
Well, seeing the truth is one thing. Right. Deciding how to police that truth is another. Devon realizes that strength without discipline isn't actually power. It's a liability.
Okay.
And this pushes him into what the notes refer to as his anti-hero phase. He encounters a villainous organization that's causing real harm.
But he doesn't just call the cops.
Nope. Instead of playing the noble hero and turning them over to the authorities, he intervenes with brutal surgical efficiency. He uses intimidation and just overwhelming pressure to crush them.
He crosses a line. He starts acting as judge, jury, and executioner.
Because he believes he's the only one disciplined enough to handle the responsibility.
But this fractures his moral standing. It raises the question, is his hyper-isolation genuinely a form of strength, or is he just using control as a shield to avoid trusting anyone?
And that internal fracture shatters completely when he eventually loses to the player character.
Because the player doesn't beat him with better math, right?
Yeah. Exactly. The notes highlight that the player wins through balance. By taking risks, trusting their team, and leaning on others when they're vulnerable.
So Devon's isolated perfectionism finally breaks.
It breaks under the weight of an unpredictable, trusting opponent. He hits rock bottom.
But what I love about this source material is that it doesn't do the cliché thing here.
Not at all.
Devon doesn't suddenly see the light, abandon his cold philosophy, and become this cheery, power friendship protagonist.
No, true to his nature, he doesn't change his core. He aligns it.
He stops fighting purely to prove everyone else is careless and starts looking for strength that actually has a purpose.
Right. Which brings us to how he reconstructs his team.
This part is so cool.
It really is. His methodology shifts from capturing tools to recruiting partners. He doesn't just wander the tall grass throwing Pokeballs at high-level creatures anymore.
Every single Pokémon he adds to his roster has to pass a rigid behavioral test, right?
Yeah, tests of competence, alignment, and most importantly, control under pressure.
So think of Devon at this stage like a high-level corporate headhunter.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Right. He's not just filling empty seats with warm bodies to hit a quota. He's hiring strictly for cultural fit under the most extreme pressure imaginable.
Exactly.
He knows that every member of your team, whether in a video game, in a business, or in your personal life, needs to reflect your absolute core values when things get unbearably tough.
And if we look at the specific team origins the document outlines, that headhunter analogy fits perfectly. Let's take that original Eevee.
The one from the snow.
Yeah. It eventually evolves into Umbreon, a dark type, but it doesn't happen through some sudden burst of joyous friendship.
It happens when he's hurt.
Right, during a battle where Devon is physically injured, most creatures would panic, lash out, or try to run.
But Eevee didn't.
No, it stayed by him, assessed the threat, evolved under a state of calculated, controlled calm. It became Umbreon not out of desperate survival, but deliberate defense.
Wow. And the way he recruits Weevil is another perfect example of his restraint.
Oh, the mountain encounter.
Yeah. He's caught in the mountains, totally surrounded by a pack of wild Sneasel. They're flanking him, using feints, basically trying to get him to panic and waste his resources.
But Devon doesn't lash out.
He stands his ground and just observes. He notices that one specific Sneasel isn't just attacking blindly. It's constantly adjusting its angle, learning his defensive patterns, and refining its approach.
So what does Devon do? He actually commands his own Pokémon to stop attacking.
Which is such a massive flex.
It's a profound moment of communication. By dropping his guard, he isn't surrendering. He's acknowledging the Sneasel's discipline.
He's telling it, I see what you're doing. You prefer precision over chaos.
Exactly. And that Sneasel doesn't get captured. It chooses to follow him, eventually becoming Weeble, because their philosophies just perfectly align.
But wait, if he's so obsessed with precision and cold control, why does the document say he recruits a Chimchar?
Ah, yeah.
Because in this universe, that line of Pokemon is essentially pure, volatile, burning emotion. It seems like the exact opposite of a cultural fit.
It is the opposite. And that's exactly why Devon's handling of it is so revealing of his growth.
Oh, okay.
He finds this Chimchar in the wild, completely burning itself out in a fight. It can't win. It's just letting its passion destroy its stamina.
So Devon waits until it collapses from exhaustion.
Right. And then he offers it a very stark choice. He tells it, you can keep burning like that until there's nothing left, or you can learn to aim it.
Learn to aim it. That's so good.
He doesn't offer it comfort. He offers it direction. Under Devon's guidance, it evolves into Infernape. That furious, chaotic fire becomes a tightly targeted weapon.
He does something similar with Absol, too. The disaster Pokemon.
Right. Everyone else fears Absol because they believe its appearance actually causes earthquakes and storms.
They treat it like a literal curse, but Devon looks at it and recognizes that Absol isn't the cause of the disaster. It's just the early warning signal.
Yeah. Absol aligns with Devon because Devon is the only person who doesn't misinterpret what he doesn't understand.
And then there's the test of endurance with Tyranitar.
That's a great one. He finds it as a Larvitar, this small, slow creature buried deep in the earth.
And most competitive trainers would immediately subject it to intense training, right?
Right.
Just to force it to evolve into its massive, destructive final form as fast as possible.
Exactly. They want the power now. But Devon just lets it sit. He lets it endure time and immense physical pressure at its own pace.
Wow.
When it finally becomes Tyranitar, it possesses enough raw power to level a mountain. But because it wasn't rushed, it has the psychological fortitude to actually choose not to rampage.
He respects power that requires restraint, not power that requires constant supervision.
Right. And the final piece of the puzzle is Cobalion. What's crucial here is that Devon didn't test Cobalion. Cobalion tested him.
See, because it's a legendary Pokemon known for its iron will, right?
Exactly. It intentionally forces Devon into a scenario where he has to protect innocent bystanders at a severe disadvantage to himself.
And the old Devon from Snowpoint would have analyzed the math, realized it was a losing battle, and just walked away to maintain his own survival.
But the aligned Devon deliberately steps into the line of fire. Cobalion stands with him to acknowledge that his discipline now serves a higher moral purpose.
Which is an amazing narrative arc. But this raises a huge question for me. Having a compelling theme is great for a story, but Pokémon is a highly mathematical, inherently competitive game.
It is.
So the true brilliance of this source document is that it doesn't just leave Devon's philosophy as abstract lore.
Oh, no. It completely strips away the narrative symbolism and demands that his psychology functions as a literal, functioning mechanical structure in a battle.
So what does this all mean when the talking stops and the game actually begins? The document outlines his team's mechanical battle identity, and it calls it controlled pressure.
Controlled pressure. It's brilliant.
The entire strategy is a punishment-based balance. You don't try to overpower the opponent with huge numbers. You force them to make agonizing decisions, let the stress cause them to make a mistake, and then you capitalize on that mistake surgically.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of competitive gaming theory, controlled pressure is really about removing your opponent's agency.
How so? Like mechanically?
Let's look at the loadouts. We start with Tyranitar, representing the environment. It holds an item called a smooth rock and possesses the ability the Sandstream.
Okay.
The literal second Tyranitar steps onto the field. It whips up a suffocating sandstorm that damages the opponent every single turn. Tyranitar doesn't even have to attack to apply pressure.
It just changes the air they breathe.
Exactly. And it also sets up Stealth Rock, which is an invisible trap that hurts anything stepping onto the field.
I mean, imagine you are the opponent sitting across from Devon. The sandstorm is ticking down your health bar.
Right.
Every time you switch your Pokémon to try and gain an advantage, Stealth Rock chunks their health. You are immediately put on a timer. The game is basically screaming at you, if you sit here and do nothing, you will die.
And naturally, human psychology dictates that you panic.
Yeah.
You feel the absolute need to end the fight quickly.
So you start using moves like Swords Dance to rapidly boost your Pokemon's attack stats, hoping to punch a hole through his defenses.
And that panic is exactly what Devon's team relies on. Because waiting in the wings is Umbreon, designated as the Judge.
The Judge. Okay, I love this.
Umbreon has a calm nature, boosting its special defense, and holds leftovers for passive, agonizingly slow health recovery.
So it's just a wall.
A wall that uses moves like Wish, Protect, and Toxic to stall the game and drain your resources. But the real linchpin of this psychological trap is the move Foul Play.
This is where the trap snaps shut, right?
Precisely. Foul Play doesn't use Umbreon's attack stat to calculate damage. It uses the opponent's attack stat.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah. So when that panicked opponent spends 3 turns boosting their own strength to try and break out of the sandstorm, Umbreon steps in and uses their own artificially inflated power to instantly knock them out.
That is the literal mechanical embodiment of Devon telling someone, you're not weak, you're just careless.
Exactly. Umbreon literally weaponizes the opponent's impatience against them.
It is brilliantly sadistic. And generating that early momentum falls to Infernape, the disruptor.
Right. Remember how Devon told it to aim its fire? Mechanically, it holds heavy-duty boots, making it immune to environmental traps.
Okay, so it ignores Stealth Rock.
Yep. And it has a naive nature, heavily boosting its speed. It uses the moves U-Turn and Flare Blitz. Infernape is basically the scout.
It darts in, hits the opponent to test their reaction, and immediately pivots back out to safety.
It never commits to a long, messy brawl. It just tests the waters and keeps the opponent off balance.
But to stabilize that constant pivoting, you need a spine, and that's Cobalion, the standard.
Right. Cobalion wears a rocky helmet. If the opponent gets frustrated and tries to throw a heavy physical punch, Cobalion steps in to absorb it.
And the rocky helmet damages the attacker just for making contact.
Exactly. Cobalion maintains the structure so the trap doesn't collapse.
Once the opponent is thoroughly worn down, poisoned, trapped, and just psychologically exhausted from hitting walls, Devon sends out Weevil.
The executioner.
Yes. Weevil holds a choice band to maximize damage output and a jolly nature for blistering speed. It doesn't play games. It ends fights surgically with priority moves like Ice Shard, which always hits first.
And he uses knockoff, right?
Yeah, knockoff literally slaps the held item out of the opponent's hands. Think about what that does to a competitive player. It removes their safety net. It strips away their last bit of agency.
It's just devastating. The synergy loop here is a flawless mechanical manifestation of Devon's disciplined mind.
Oh, entirely.
Infernape pivots and tests their habits. Tyranitar alters the environment and sets a timer. Umbreon stabilizes the board and punishes greed. Cobalion absorbs the heavy hits. And finally, Weevil cleans up the broken pieces.
But we can't forget the wild card. Absol is designated the risk.
Right. Absol holds a scope lens and has the super luck ability, which significantly increases the chance of landing a critical hit.
It represents Devon's unpredictable past. It relies on probability.
Yeah, it can snowball out of control and win a game single-handedly, or it can fail to land a critical hit and become entirely dead weight.
Which actually brings me to my biggest question about this entire document. The notes explicitly list the flaws in this controlled pressure strategy.
They do.
Like, it relies heavily on Devon perfectly predicting his opponent's switches. If Cobalion gets knocked out early, the entire team is incredibly weak to fighting type attacks and can just collapse.
Right.
And, as we just said, Absol is a mathematical gamble. Why would a character who is so relentlessly obsessed with control and perfection build a team with such glaring, exploitable vulnerabilities?
Well, because Devon's narrative arc doesn't end with him trying to be an invincible world champion.
Oh.
The document explains that his final evolution as a character is returning to Snowpoint City to become the Dark-type gym leader at the Dusk Hollow Bastion.
Ah, so he isn't trying to be an unbreakable wall.
No, his job is to be a gatekeeper.
He is intentionally presenting a test.
Yes, exactly. The Dark-type, in the context of this universe, tests a trainer's ability to handle deception, consequence, and moral ambiguity. He operates this gym as the final check before a trainer is allowed to wield truly dangerous levels of power.
That makes perfect sense.
If a challenger is disciplined, if they observe the board, figure out the synergy, and exploit that fighting-type weakness, Devon's team can be systematically dismantled.
He wants to be beaten by someone who thinks critically.
Exactly. But if the challenger is sloppy, impulsive, or just pressing buttons hoping their raw power will carry them through, Devon's machine of controlled pressure will utterly humiliate them.
It really is a brilliant subversion of the standard competitive mindset. Devon's journey isn't the cliché weak character trains hard and becomes strong arc.
Not at all.
It's this profound evolution from being hyper-controlled out of fear to having that control questioned and broken down to finally refining that discipline into something that serves a necessary purpose in his world.
He ensures that those who see power actually understand the heavy burden of consequence that comes with it.
Which fundamentally changes how you view a competitive match, right? It becomes less about reacting to the flashing lights on the screen and more about mastering your own impulses within the environment.
Totally. It's about who blinks first under pressure.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Devon's notes, I want to challenge you, the listener, to evaluate your own strategies in life.
Yeah, how do you handle your own high-pressure situations?
Exactly. Whether you're navigating a crisis at work, dealing with a highly volatile argument, or just managing limited resources. When the sandstorm is ticking down your health, are you just mashing the boost buttons and hoping something works out?
Or do you have the discipline to wait?
Right. Do you assess the board, let the other person reveal their pattern, and capitalize only when the timing is perfect? I want to leave you with Devon's ultimate test for his challengers.
It's a great quote.
When he returns to his freezing hometown as a gatekeeper, he looks at the confident, passionate trainers standing before him, shivering in the blistering cold, and he tells them, "Snowpoint doesn't shape you. It reveals what was already there. Let's see what you are."
Such a powerful thought.
Think about that. Who are you and what are your baseline standards when absolutely nothing is forcing you to be better? In life, there isn't always going to be a clean, obvious answer to your problems. When the environment gets harsh and the landscape gets murky, the structure has to come from within.
It really does.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.